Hey there, and welcome to Chapter 2 of the book study of Vegetables Love Flowers. I am so glad that you have decided to join us here for this journey through my book, Vegetables Love Flowers. I'm Lisa Mason Ziegler, the author. So we're kind of digging in deep, and this week's chapter is how to interplant your vegetable patch. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but the introduction of this book and chapter 1 were kind of selling people on why you have to plant flowers in your vegetable patch, right? So we know that we have a lot of folks that are trying this that have never planted flowers in their vegetable patch because they really just didn't know why that was so important, right? So I have experienced something similar to what a lot of you people that are for the first time doing this, but I had the opposite problem. So you know my story by now that, I married into this big vegetable gardening family, then read a book about flower farming, and then started adding flowers in. Well, as my business started taking off, I didn't have room to write everything in the book. So this is a little bit deeper on that. As my flower business started taking off, I planted more and more and more and more flowers. And what happened is I thought of vegetables then like many vegetable growers or gardeners think of flowers. I don't have room for them anymore, is what I thought in my mind. And so I went through a very brief period. No, we can't plant corn this year. It takes up too much space, and I need to plant more flowers because I have customers chomping at the bit to buy them, right? So I understand your feeling of not wanting to give up space in your garden to something that you're just not sure has an importance. Because I'll tell you, I've now gone full circle. This is my 20th year of being a commercial flower farmer. And during the high years, there was about 8 of them where we were growing so many flowers on this little farm you just can't even imagine. 10 to 15,000 stems of flowers a week from just 1.5 acres. And I didn't want to give any of it up. It was all I could do to give up 1 row to tomatoes, because everybody's got to grow tomatoes. But here's the story. I've now gone full circle and realized just how important vegetables are. Not only is it for our family, we just got away from growing our own, and it worked out okay for me because I have good friends that are vegetable growers, so I was still getting vegetables locally grown. However, not only do the people that work here with me really, really want organically grown, fresh local food, but as my business has developed through the years, we have this, members only farmers market on farm here, and only members are allowed to come. You know what I've learned? That when we have just a few vegetables each week for those flower customers that don't have to come every week, they come at will. They come more often because guess what? They love the fresh vegetables as much as we all do. So I totally get why you don't want to give flowers a space. So before I get started here, I did want to read to you from chapter 2, just a paragraph, and it's on page 36. It's the second actual paragraph, and it says, "Eventually, my eyes were opened to the truth. There are different types of annuals, and each type has different planting times and preferred growing conditions. I learned that the workhorses of the cut flower and vegetable garden are the cool season hardy annuals and the warm season tender annuals. Both groups include many flowers, vegetables, and herbs to choose from, and both types live for 1 year. The key difference is in the planting time." So we are going to look at in this chapter succession planting, which I know is a huge thing. Everybody needs to know about that, and we're going to just kind of hit on it, and we're going to look at some diagrams here. And I want to just, before I talk to you about those two different annuals, I want to tell you what the bottom line rub is. My recommendation is that for your garden to have 40% space for flowers and 60% space for vegetables. And here's why. Because this is the ultimate goal. Of that 40% of flower space, 20% of it, let's just say it's spring right now, if you couldn't tell from my beautiful daffodils that are sitting here at my shoulder, 20% of those flowers are blooming in spring, and the other 20% you're planting right now to be blooming in the next season, which is summer, right? So that's why you have to have space for both. You don't go out and plant all your space at one time. I know that is so, I'm facing this problem right now, I'm just realizing. You're so excited, you've started way more seeds probably than you have space to plant them. And then you go out and plant your entire garden space. And then all of a sudden, you don't have anywhere to plant 4 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now to prepare for the next season, right? That's everybody's problem. They're like, they plant everything. It all comes on. It about kills you too, because there's so much to harvest, so much to take care of, so much to keep weeded, all of those maintenance chores. So in addition to, in my whole garden, and we're going to look at the diagrams in the back of the book in just a moment, and we're going to be looking at the garden that shows, as an example, a 6-bed garden. The beds are only like 10 foot long, so it's not a really large garden. I think it's 10 foot. I'll have to look. Isn't that crazy? I don't even remember. So we're going to look at that. So your whole garden needs to have a designated space, 40% for flowers, and 60% for vegetables. In addition to that, or kind of working along with that, and you'll see how this goes, is you're not running out in early spring and planting your entire 6 beds. You're going to be planting, about a third of it at one time to be harvested or enjoyed first, and the next third will be planted in a few weeks. So we're going to learn more about the art of succession planting, which I think is a really big problem for a lot of folks. So let's take a look at this. I'm looking back on page 166 and then over in 169. So these beds actually start on page 165, but we're not going to talk about the vegetable beds. We're going to talk about the flower beds. So in this garden, there are 6 beds. And they are 10 foot long, by the way, from looking at this. And each page, as you can see here, this is one bed as it warps through time, okay? So bed number 2 is the bed that was either planted, for those of us that live in areas that can fall plant hardy annuals, this bed is the bed that's going to be blooming in spring, okay? So while that bed is blooming in spring over here on page 166, I folded my page in half that's in between them, by the way, and you can do that too if it'll help you. If you look over at page 169 to bed number 5, this is spring. And this bed is being planted. That's why the flowers don't have blooms on them. So while you're enjoying and reaping the bounty of spring of the hardy annuals over here in bed number 2, you're planting bed number 5 with the blooms that'll be coming in when summer rolls in. So while you're reaping the bounty of one bed or season, you're planting the next season. You're totally embracing seasonal growing, right? And when you really embrace seasonal growing, there's no heroic measures taken. And that means that if you're not planting warm season annuals, and we're going to talk, I just realized I skipped right over us talking about what the difference in those two are just a little bit. But when you're planting cool season annuals in the early spring where, my goodness, it still freezes at night, it's cold in the morning, but it warms up in the afternoon. when you're planting cool season annuals during that period, they love that weather. You don't have to worry about covering them or making any provisions. And people are suffering from this right now. But those people that planted their warm season tender annuals too early, because it's not time for them yet, that's when you have to jump into action when you read it's going to be 41 degrees tonight and you've planted your warm season annuals out. This whole succession planting and embracing seasonal planting prevents that heartburn, y'all. I'm telling you, I just was out yesterday with my husband for lunch, and the lady that owns the restaurant, who just got my book, Vegetables Love Flowers, said to me, I think I've made a grave error. And I said, oh yeah, what's that? She said, I realized that I went out and bought tender annuals, warm season annuals. Note, you cannot trust retailers. They sell plants before their planting time because people want them. Just because a store is selling them does not mean it's the time to plant them. They meet the demands of the people. And if the people think the stores are telling them when it's the proper time to plant, but that's not true. So if you plant cool season hardy annuals in spring, early spring when you're supposed to, you don't need any heroics. We are just here in southeastern Virginia on the cusp of when it's time to plant warm season annuals. So we are actually just starting to harvest our cool season flowers. I cut my first poppies, my first bachelor buttons, and this is early April. So we are just embracing those lovers of cool weather while we're seed starting the warm season stuff to be ready to go out when it's the warm season. So I just want to talk just a little bit about those two types of annuals. And I talk about this in the book, and I can't say it enough because I'm telling you, when I speak to professional groups, whether they're farmers or landscape organizations. When the word annual is spoken, everybody immediately thinks of warm season annuals, which are the most popular. We're talking zinnias, sunflowers, tomatoes, basil, all those plants that are being put out in stores right now for you to go and buy. But there's a whole nother group that is more than half of our cash crop here on our farm. But in addition, it gives you 2 more seasons of blooms in your garden. And it's true in vegetables too. We're talking about cool season hardy annuals. My book, Cool Flowers, is all about that subject. And, excuse me, it really holds your hand and takes you down that rabbit hole of figuring out when you plant, how to go about all of that, and what flowers those are. And there are plenty of vegetables, the cool season vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, lettuce, radishes, carrots, those things that most of us tend to plant too late. We wait until spring, but they should be almost ready to harvest in spring. So you really need to embrace seasonal growing. And that way you don't have to, as I said, provide heroic measures when bad weather comes. So, embracing this whole seasonal growing and succession planting will change the way that you garden. I promise that. So succession planting means don't go out and plant your entire garden in spring. Hopefully, maybe you already knew about cool flowers and cool vegetables, and you planted those 6 to 8 weeks ago, which is about the right time, 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost, where it's still cold, even chilly in the mornings, warms up in the afternoon. We even plant through snow sometimes. So that's a really great, I talk a little bit about it in Vegetables Love Flowers on how to manage that and include it. And chapter 4 and 5 of the book actually split out the annuals. There's a warm season tender annual. I just highlight 10. There are plenty more to choose from, but they're just 10 of my favorites, easiest growers, and really easy to start from seed, just really easy to add into your garden, especially for those that are growing flowers for the very first time. And then there's also a chapter on the cool season flowers. And again, easy starters, easy to manage. So you really just want to embrace this whole seasonal growing to benefit your vegetable garden, because as I speak about, I think I talk about this in chapter 4, but I will mention it here. Those spring bloomers, like those bachelor buttons that are blooming right now, guess what they're doing? They're inviting the beneficial insects and the pollinators into the garden earlier than you've ever had them, because they have an invitation to come in and stay. So it really gets your whole powerful Mother Nature workforce going so much earlier. So you can really embrace seasonal growing, and I also embrace the yard or farm around my working cutting garden. I have a huge native border, and we're going to talk a lot about that near the end of the book. But I not only embrace that to bring the beneficials in, but also for making bouquets. There is nothing sweeter than early spring bouquets. So the beneficial insects, the pollinators love it. You're going to love it. And as I mentioned in the book, spring will be so amazing for flowers in your garden, and you're going to see such activity in your garden that'll empower even the hardcore veggie grower to plan and start the seeds for their summer garden. So I hope this has kind of helped you look at succession planting a little bit different, and to help you understand it while you're embracing this season. You're planting for the next season, and you have to leave space to plant that season, right? And then when that season gets going, that's when your early season is out of here. It's done. We pull it out and plant again more of these warm season to up our bounty, and to have great tomatoes in the fall. We plant them in the middle of summer, or just a few weeks after the first planting if you're in the northern part of the country. So embrace that. So I'm so glad you decided to join me here today for chapter 2. And I hope that you're sharing this with your friends, so sharing it on social media. I really appreciate that. And I also want to remind you that below this video, there is a link where you can catch up on previous videos, as well as the making of the book for anybody that's interested in how I got the book deal and how that kind of all goes. And I have a little interview with the photographer, Bob Shammerhorn, and my sister, Suzanne, who does the bouquets here on the farm, and how we work together. So we'd love for you to watch that and to share that with your friends also. So I'm really excited about heading into this season and to helping you see the big picture, that there is nothing more powerful than inviting nature in, and nature comes in because of flowers. Hey, till we meet again, ciao.